Well, hi everybody and welcome. Thank you for coming in such great numbers today. Just to say, because I mustn't forget to say this, you can tweet us here and I will see your tweets on the screen. So it's MGEITF hashtag SIDLaw. And we've really moved on this year because we're not getting them on bits of paper. They actually arrive on the laptop here. Delighted to be joined by the youngest ever controller of BBC One. How many 36-year-olds have a budget of £1.1 billion? That is £31 million for each year of his life. So new controller, blank slate. You can tell him what he should be doing, but first of all, we're going to let him tell us what his plans are. Please welcome Danny Cohen. So, the strange position at the moment of controlling somebody else's channel, aren't you? You're handling Jay Hunt's material. Give us some idea of what your narrative will be.
Well, you're right, Jeremy. I've been doing the job about 9 months now, and it feels rough. Basically, from Christmas onwards, from the Christmas schedule onwards, it begins to feel more the channel that I've co-commissioned with, the heads of the genres. Heads of the BBC commissioning genres. And inevitably, actually, right through any BBC One controller's time, you have a mix of stuff you've done, a mix of stuff that other people have done. We've got Frozen Planet coming up in the autumn that was, commissioned probably 4 or 5 years ago. So you're always going to have a mix, but broadly from December onwards, Christmas onwards, it begins to feel like some of the stuff we've been commissioning recently is going to come through. Well,
you could just leave it as it is, couldn't you?
Yeah, there's some amazing thing there. It's part of the joy of doing BBC One that you have such a range of programmes. I find a job where you're talking about drama and comedy scripts, and then you go into a meeting about 9 o'clock panoramas. It's you feel very privileged to do a job like that.
But you've been told by the BBC Trust to take more risks. They say you've got to make early BBC One peak time surprising and show creative ambition at 9 p.m. How do you respond to an instruction as vague as that?
Ooh. Well, obviously, I think it's a very clear instruction. And, you just got to try and find the right programmes in the end, haven't you? I mean, if you take 9 o'clock, drama is a key part of 9 o'clock. We're going to enter a period, as I say, from around Christmas or slightly before, where there's a huge amount of new drama coming through on BBC One. I think in the next 18 months, we're going to have 21 new series or serials coming to BBC One Drama, completely new projects. So you're going to feel in the next 18 months a big step change in our drama, the breadth of our drama, the range of topics we take on. So I think with things like that, taking on so many new projects, we're going to be expressing ourselves in different ways and in fresh and new ways.
Lorraine was saying, what are the new franchises?
Yeah, well, as I said, we've got 21, I think it's 21 series, 7 singles that will be new to BBC One audience in the next 18 months. We've got some great franchises that are continuing. Sherlock will be back in the near future. Wallander will return. We've got some very, very big shows. Luther will return. So we're trying to balance that with fresh and new and things that we think will be fresh and new. And you've always got a delicate balance because whilst people often have their favourites and say these are things we love, we also know that the audience want new things and they want to have exciting new things on the telly. So we're trying to balance that. And undoubtedly, this next period is going to be a period where there will be a number of those reliable, very high-quality returners, but we're going to try and launch some new high-quality shows as well.
Can you give us a big picture there of what all of that stuff put together makes or means?
Well, obviously, it's multi-genre, so it's hard to encapsulate in a sentence. I've mentioned drama. We've got a lot of new drama coming through. One other one it's not on the tape, but I can mention today is we've got a new drama coming from Peter Moffat, The Village, which tells the story of a man's life right through the 20th century, starting on his very kind of downtrodden childhood on a farm in early 20th century. So we've got lots and lots of new drama coming through in both series, serials and singles, and I'm trying to get, with Ben, a number of new singles into our mix as well, so that we have a degree more single dramas alongside those series and serials.
David Jason coming back to BBC?
Yeah, I'm so thrilled about that. I went down to the set actually early this week. He's a remarkable, remarkable man. His performances are so, so remarkable. It's the first comedy he's done since Only Fools and Horses for the BBC, so it's a big moment for us. He plays a absolute Wally of a bodyguard who somehow creates the chaos and then saves the day at the end of each episode, and he's brilliant in it. So that, we're trying to develop more new comedy. Comedy is a really interesting challenge for us, actually. We've got David Jason coming back. We've obviously got Miranda coming over, which I'm thrilled about. We've got Outnumbered, Mrs. Brown's Boys, Lee Mack's not going out. But it's one of the areas I've been surprised about, actually. That I feel we're undersupplied in comedy and we don't get enough BBC One comedy scripts.
Well, looking at some of the stuff you're dropping My Family, Lark Rise to Candleford and Zen. Let me ask you about My Family first. Chopped because it's unchallenging middle-class fare, or what?
No, they've all left home. So, My Family started a long time ago, has been a brilliant thing for BBC One, but the youngest kid has, I think, been to university and left again. So it felt like the right time to.
So it's a football match that came to an end. It's not a signal about the kind of comedy you don't like.
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, not at all. What we need is a range of comedy. It's as with the story and drama, we need a range of things, and what we want to do is get things that reflect different parts of the audience, different people's lives. But we just felt that had come to the end of its natural life. In the case of Lark Rise, Bill Gallagher, who writes it, has decided he didn't want to write it anymore. So, there are often local and specific reasons why things end when they do. Spooks, again, Kudos have said they feel it's the end of the natural life of the show. We've got quite a lot of that happening at once, but I'm trying to see that as a positive, an opportunity to try lots of new things. Some will work less well, and we'll learn as we go.
Just stick on comedy for a second, if we can. You mentioned not getting enough straight sitcom scripts.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about that?
Well, we're going to do a run of TXable comedy pilots, which is something I don't think BBC One's done before, and which we're able to mention for the first time today. We're going to do about 4 of them, depending on how many come in, probably 4. The aim is that they are, as I say, TXable in the BBC One schedule. We'd like the focus to be studio sitcom, because that's where Cheryl and I feel we're particularly undersupplied. And we'd like to use that as a way of supercharging our development process. So we'd like to get scripts in, if possible, by the end of November and start to get them into production early next year, so that we can have a run of transmittable comedy pilots by hopefully the middle of next year.
So half the room is excited by this. We're sending scripts to you. What do they need to know or do? Because the sitcom has been battered to death as a format, and you're reviving it.
Well, I don't think I'm reviving it. I mean, we've got Miranda and Mrs. Brown's Boys, brilliant sitcoms. But what I'd like to do is give it a bit of a supercharge in development, because I've been surprised by, when I was at BBC Three, you get a certain amount of scripts reach you from the genre for consideration. I'd say it's about 8 to 1, the amount I get compared to BBC Three. And I think there are complex reasons for that, many different kinds of reasons for that. But in a sense, the best thing to do is, okay, what can we do about it? How can we add some new momentum to it? And I'd like to do it in a quite risky way, where our ambition is that we transmit these pilots, which you don't do often on BBC One. It's something we tried at BBC Three, and we ended up with Being Human at the end of a run of transmittable drama pilots, and I'd like to think we can try and achieve something similar here.
You also got, and I know this because I present points of view, a lot of complaints from people who thought the pilot was the start of something, and then it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, they got annoyed.
But that can be a problem.
What did we say at the time?
I think you said we're looking at it very seriously.
Yeah.
You obviously were.
Very seriously.
All right, Miranda's in the room, so let's get on to our Miranda territory without embarrassing her. She's moving from BBC Two to BBC One. Are you happy to be looting the stock from their shop window?
Oh, that's a very fiery word for these times, Jeremy. I wouldn't use a word like that in the friendly portfolio of channels at the BBC. It's something that's happened throughout the history of BBC One, its relationship with BBC Two, from The Apprentice to Who Do You Think You Are to Have I Got News For You. There's been a long tradition of shows that have really caught fire on BBC Two or BBC Three. The feeling of the BBC has been that those shows had reached the biggest possible audience, and that means putting them on BBC One.
But it doesn't go for Top Gear for some reason. Can anyone explain that?
No, they can't. No, there's other reasons.
Or Dragon's Den. Why can't you go and knock on Janice's door and say, I've got a couple of questions for you?
I don't want to do that with everything. I think what you want to do is say, here are the odd things that we think can grow even bigger, particularly wonderful, high-quality things that we think could reach BBC One-size audiences. And I'm delighted that Miranda's coming over to BBC One. She's fantastic.
QI going back the other way.
Yes. Well,
what's that all about?
Well, I didn't want it to be a one-way street. I always felt that QI was a brilliant programme, but was arguably more BBC Two in tone than BBC One. and I wanted to show willing both ways, that it shouldn't just be a one-way street.
So did you preempt? Were you the one who made the running there?
Well, I suggested it in my interview for the job. My scheduling team, when I arrived at BBC One, thought I was crazy and shouldn't have said it, but it's done now.
Right, and it just goes back to BBC Two.
Going back to BBC Two quite soon, yeah.
Okay, and you don't have any problem with that whole arrangement of BBC Two supplying you with stuff and BBC Three, and you're happy with that?
I think if you set really solid boundaries between the channels, I think that's really counterproductive. I don't think you need creative fluidity. You need the ability for things to move between different places, to grow, to sometimes move in different directions. Torchwood's another example that's been on 3 and then 1, and that's why you have a portfolio of channels.
Let me ask you about drama, and I mentioned Zen, which is going after, I think, 3 episodes. It did quite well, didn't it? But you didn't like it.
It's not that I didn't like it. What I felt was that we needed to get the balance right between the volume of crime drama we have and the breadth of drama that Ben and I would like us to have. We've got a range of brilliant crime shows that are going to remain very, very important to BBC One. We've got some brilliant detectives, Sherlock, as I mentioned, Walland and Luther. But I want to get that balance right. I want us to be known for many different kinds of drama, for breadth and range. I'd like people to think that on BBC One you have a greater diversity of worlds and types of drama than you have on television anywhere else in Britain. And you can't achieve that if you're over-dependent on one thing. So it's just about getting that balance right.
Because you said a few months ago, I felt that we risked having too many male detectives, and arguably we had too much crime. I want to make sure we've got enough that's not detectives and crime. Is that right?
Yeah, we want to get that balance right. And as I say, we've got some absolutely brilliant detectives and absolutely first-class, highest quality crime drama and detective drama and things like Sherlock, Wallander and Luther. But I want to get that balance right, and I want, with those 20-odd new series coming in the next 18 months, to get the balance right between detectives, crime and non-crime subjects. Do
you think TV through the ages has just defaulted to crime almost everywhere? You think about, well, my childhood rather than yours, but it was Kojak and the Streets of San Francisco and Starsky and Hutch. It was all crime, basically.
Yeah, look, it's a staple, and it's a much-loved staple, and I don't want to sound disrespectful in any way. I watch all of those shows. But I want, if your ambition is to have creative range and to take more risks, you need to be doing things other than crime as a big part of your mix.
So if somebody there is writing the British version of The Killing...
We still want it.
I was going to say, they stop.
No, and that, it's always the danger when sometimes you can get misquoted out of context and it's, no more crime. It's absolutely not what I've said. We want the next big crime drama, and I can't wait to see the next series of Sherlock. But I do want us to have range. I want writers and producers to think that they can pitch us on a wide variety of topics that they hope can reach 5, 6, 7, 8 million people.
Caroline Quentin told Press Association in April there are many, many more men on screen than women, and I know we just touched on that, but her reference was to male-led dramas. Now, do you start to try and sort that out?
Well, we've got, as I say, I think you'll see in our range of dramas, we've got some very, very strong female leads. We've got Call the Midwife coming up, which Miranda again's in, and a very strong female cast. We've got a new series coming up called Antony and Cleopatra, which is a male-female two-hander. I think we're making ground in that area as well, actually, yeah.
Your background is essentially drama and factual mainly, so Skins, In-Betweeners, Phone Jacker, Super Nanny and so on. Entertainment, not so much.
No, I've done a bit less of that. We didn't. I used to work in documentary and at E4, and we didn't do as much formal entertainment at E4. But I hope at BBC Three we began to develop a more coherent entertainment story with Russell Brand and so on. We couldn't spend a huge amount on entertainment at BBC Three, but not Russell Brand, Russell Howard. I think with things like Russell Howard Show, we showed that we could develop a new style for entertainment on BBC Three. So we're working hard at that, and I'm surrounded by smart people in the entertainment
team. The thing that came out very much out of the film is that there is a hole on Saturdays. There's a sense that you have to find something big.
Yeah.
Now, you've bought The Voice.
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Because I thought it was really good.
But why not? You've got great people sitting in West London or wherever it is who can also have really good ideas. Why buy it from somewhere else?
Because every so often, I think the BBC has bought something from abroad when they think it's really peerlessly good. So, a great example of that's The Apprentice. The BBC bought The Apprentice a number of years ago, found a way of doing it in its own style, found a brilliant leader for it in Alan Sugar, brilliant production team who made, I think, the British version the best in the world. And The Voice, we hope, will be a similar story to that. We shouldn't shut the door on anything. You know, the BBC in the 80s was dominated on some evenings by Dallas and Dynasty, and we don't have anything like that now. But I don't think we should be so myopic to think that we can't learn anything from the rest of the world.
But it's not a sign of desperation that we're struggling for an entertainment format.
Not at all. We've got a long rest of the year. We've got our big magician show. We've got Strictly Come Dancing. We've got Let's Dance for Comic Relief. We've got Total Wipeout. These are all UK shows, but I don't think we should think we've always got all the answers and we can't learn something from somewhere else.
Is there too much dancing? You've got Let's Dance. You've got So You Think You Can Dance.
There'll be less dancing next year.
So what's going? What dancing is
So
stopping?
You Think You Can Dance is stopping.
Right. And in terms of an entertainment slot on Saturday, you mentioned The Voice. What else?
Well, next year, as I say, we've got The Magician Show, we've got Let's Dance for Comic Relief, we've got Strictly coming back. The area we're undersupplied in and need 2 or 3 new shows is the tea time slot. So the 6 o'clock slot where we've played Total Wipeout and shows like that. It's really hard slot because you're not spending the kind of money you would on an X Factor or Strictly, and I think it's been a challenging slot for both ITV and BBC One.
And you've taken us there to Don't Scare the Hair, which was not a success. Can you explain what happened there?
It wasn't good enough in the end. I mean, I think the team tried very hard. It preceded me. I was just coming in towards the end of it, and it was a very creative, innovative idea, and I don't think we should ever be embarrassed or ashamed of trying new things, some of which will work and some which won't. You don't have innovation if you don't try new things, take risks, be prepared to fail. So I don't think we should ever be embarrassed by that.
But do you drop it too quickly? I mean, do you get a sense with the first one it's not working, or what?
No, I think after 3 or 4 you know where a show's sometimes going. I think audiences are, they've got a lot of choice now, and they do make decisions quite fast. Sometimes the key is to just stick with it and ride it out. Sometimes you've got to think, okay, this isn't working, what else could we serve up to the audience at that time?
Because you've highlighted this difficulty of tea time and trying to get adults and children sitting watching something, and Hole in the Wall was another much lampooned show. That was
very successful show.
I was going to say, it got some good figures.
Did you ever go on that?
Didn't go on it, actually, no. But I mean, funnily enough, I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we all used to watch it, and we all used to enjoy it. So I take your point about that type of audience.
Yeah,
but Don't Scare the Hair was exactly in that zone, and yet completely failed.
Your words.
So what's the next?
Look, it didn't quite catch on. I think, you know, that people didn't engage with a robot in the way people thought.
That's a good line.
You know?
That's a good line. Just leave it there, actually.
No, but the one other thing I'd say, which I hope is a clue to how to get things right, is that I think in that tea time slot, and you've just described it in your home, kids are watching the telly with their parents, but the kid is probably holding the remote control, but you're watching it together. And I think probably what happened with Don't Scare the Hair was you couldn't watch it as a family with the adults as well, and so it didn't break through in the way that Total Wipeout and Hole in the Wall have.
Okay, this is great. We've just got our first tweet, which I think is because you've held the room spellbound, and no one has been on their devices. But you can tweet us on the MG thing with the tag Sid Law, and here we go. This is the moment. I'm going to read it out. Danny, how can you expect comedy pilots to be any good if there is only until November to write them and get them on air next year? Comedies need a long time to find their unique world, character, and purpose. You cannot do that in months, surely.
We're going to try.
But is November the deadline?
It's a first deadline, yeah, because we're in a constant process of development, and some people will have been working on scripts which they haven't submitted yet, which then gives them a target. Some people may have an idea that they've started writing, but that they'll hopefully spend a fair amount more time on until then. We're not stopping after November, but you've got to set some deadlines if you want to get things moving quickly. And if we haven't got the right ones by November, we'll push it back. But I do want us to start to feel like we've got some new comedy coming through next year.
Because comedy is...
And we're not asking for a whole series, we're asking for a first script.
Which is half an hour or an hour or half an hour. Okay. Anyone want to ask about these comedy pilots? Because it's obviously potentially very fertile area. Anyone want to ask the controller what he's looking for? Or tweet it through to here. Yes, sir.
Mainly post-Watershed, actually. I mean, there's ones that can play at 8:30 or 9 is quite useful, but I think principally post-Watershed. But the thing is, really at this point, I wouldn't want to limit what people do, because there's a danger at this point. We will need a kind of vast array of things. Studio sitcom is, as I said, one of the things we're specifically undersupplied in. But at the same time, if you've got a really funny, laugh-out-loud single-camera piece that you've been brewing in your head, we'd love to know about it.
Anyone else getting tips on... Yes, at the back. Shout it out.
Catherine Jeffs, I'm from the Natural History Unit, actually, but I just wanted to ask, seeing as we're sitting with a massive event outside there, which is, attracted comedians from all around the world, and, incredible creativity, are you also engaging with them and and trying to kind of, work with them to kind of work up the next comedy?
We do. I think the BBC engages with that a great deal. We've got, the BBC Festival site there. BBC Three has been doing programmes from the Fringe, and obviously BBC Three is a very key place for that new talent to happen. But, the teams from BBC Commissioning and indeed BBC In-House and, of course, indie producers, they're up in Edinburgh for the last week or two or longer, going to all those events, trying to find those next gems. I think it's a really, really important part of what we do, undoubtedly. And obviously, needless to say, a huge amount of the big names on BBC television elsewhere now started at events here.
And a thought on stand-up comedy and the return of that, which has been a phenomenon in this country, led by Michael McIntyre.
I thought you were going to say led by Tim Vine.
Well, he's happy about it, but anyway. Performing at 3:45, everyone. Okay. but it's the new rock and roll, but it is very male-dominated, isn't it?
There are a lot of male stand-ups, but there are some brilliant female ones as well. I think someone was telling me how good Sarah Millican's show is this year. Josie Long, I think, is shortlisted again for the Perrier. So I think there's a good mixed bunch and a huge. I mean, the amazing thing it's distinguished by the variety of the.
But the ones who've come through on screen, John Bishop and Russell Howard and Michael himself and so on, Lee Mack, we could mention as well, are all blokes.
They are.
And that sort of runs counter to your initial thought that you're
I
don't bring them on as female detectives.
I don't programme the Edinburgh Festival, so I can't take direct responsibility for the good or the bad parts. But we've got a fair amount of female comedians and strong female comedians coming through on BBC One and in a number of different places. But you're right, it has tended to be an industry, principally peopled by men. But I think that is changing. Okay,
Kevin Bridges, you mentioned his new. You want to talk about the comedian, Scottish comedian? He's got a new show coming up. So tell us about that.
So that's something else I can mention today. That another comedian that we're making a commitment to is Kevin Bridges, who's a brilliant young Scottish stand-up. We're going to do a new entertainment series with him, with the working title "What's the Story?" and it's going to be a mixture of stand-up and documentary journey, I think is the best way of putting it. So that's for the Saturday night or Friday night 9:30 or 10:35 slot, where we're still looking for a number of pieces for next year in 2013, which are factual entertainment, comedy-driven. That, alongside another couple of panel shows, I think that's another area where we're a bit short in development too.
And you mentioned, or I mentioned, Lee Mack and Not Going Out, and obviously brilliant actors in that.
Who's in that?
Miranda and some other guy.
Yeah.
All-star cast, though. Are you bringing that back?
We haven't decided. I saw Lee for the first time yesterday for a while, the quiz thing, and we talked about how many people in television called P and stuff like that in practice. We didn't talk about that, so we haven't decided yet.
Okay. Does he want it to come back?
We haven't talked about it, so I don't know.
All right. Here's a question, another tweeted question. Thank you if you tweeted this in. Do you think with the X Factor changes, this is the year for Strictly to beat it in the ratings? And do ratings matter to you and the BBC?
Who sent that?
It's anonymous.
First part. I'm not massively interested in whether we beat it or not. I want Strictly to be brilliant again. I think it was really, really very good last year. Brilliantly led by the BBC In-House team, Moira Ross and co, Joe Wallace at the Entertainment Commissioning end. I want it to be brilliant again. I'm going to try and avoid it going head-to-head with X Factor again. That's what we did last autumn, and I'm not particularly interested in it going head-to-head where possible. So I'm not fussed about that. I just want it to be really good.
Because you said,
what was the do ratings matter?
Do ratings matter? Because I'm just going to read a quote to you that you said. I want BBC One to be the most popular channel, but to get there, we do not need to win in the ratings every night. Popular and ratings are kind of synonymous, though, aren't they?
They are. And, I thought the quote you're going to read there was me saying ratings matter, because I've said that too. That we don't have to win every night.
Which is your current position?
Oh, both. We don't have to win every night. One of my first co-commissions for Panorama was the Castlebeck abuse film. That didn't win in the ranks every night. It's probably one of the things I'm most proud about being involved in the first few months in the job. So I couldn't care less if that wins in the ratings every night. And, and I've said to Tom Giles, who I think is leading Panorama brilliantly, bring me more things like that. We can do more than 8 a year if that's the amount of slots. Let's do 10, 12 if you can bring me things of that quality. But I also do believe that if people pay the licence fee, they should get programmes they want to watch. I don't think that's rocket science. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think on a channel like BBC One, you want people to watch the programmes. I don't think we should be ashamed of that.
All right, we've got a question about Formula One, which I want to move on to. The tweet says this: why did the BBC share the F1 rights with Sky instead of Channel 4? Does that mean the British Grand Prix will only be available on Sky Sports?
We shared it because we have to save about 20% across the BBC in the next few years following the latest licence fee settlement. It means some things are going to have to change. We don't know yet all the details of what's going to change because the Director General and the Trust are still talking about all of that, and we'll come to some conclusions later in the year. But one of the early things that we were able to move quickly on was Formula One. We have to save money in a number of different places, and we felt that by sharing it, we could maintain Formula One on the BBC, but save some money at the same time. And we're going to have to do some things like that.
It's caused a big backlash among Formula One fans, as you know, who are quite vociferous. But how does it work inside the BBC? It's paid for by sport, so they save the money, you lose the programme, and you don't get anything out of it. Is that right?
It's bad, isn't it, Jeremy?
Well, can't you get some money out of them, or what?
No. How does it work like that? I mean, we've all got our different pots. That you're right to say sport have got a separate pot. They'll still be providing us with 10 live races and highlight shows, so it's not like we're losing Formula One, and we'll have to make up the time elsewhere.
But you have to spend your own money to make up for what sport are saving, is that correct?
Yeah, but we're all going to have to say, you know, BBC One is not the only channel or the only thing in the world that's going to have a bit less money than it used to in the coming years. And we've all just got to get on with it.
So as you've had to offer up these savings, which presumably you've done, 20%, can you give us any idea of where those 20% will come in BBC One?
I can't today. I'm sorry. I know other BBC controllers have said the same thing. Mark is about to discuss that in the coming weeks with Lord Patton and the Trust. They need to talk about it. The BBC executive's got to have a position. The Trust has got to have a position. They've got to discuss that position. I don't think any of them will thank me for preempting them.
All right, let me ask you just a question about the mood music, though. You've got this enormous budget, so obviously people will be looking at it as an area for savings. And yet Pat Young, who is the kind of chief creative something officer, sorry, Pat, said in Ariel in March 2011 that we're going to prioritise quality in peak time, and suggested that BBC One might be ring-fenced. Could that be right?
I think the first is true, that, you know, it's going to be important to focus on quality in peak. I think that's definitely true.
But you could get away with it.
BBC One's not ring-fenced.
So you have to give savings?
Yeah.
And do you have to give 20% of savings?
I can't tell you that.
Okay. Just before we leave this,
yeah.
You're looking at the BBC One schedule.
Yeah.
Take Chris Patton out of your mind.
Let's relax.
Okay? Let's relax.
Yeah.
You're looking at the schedule. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to stick the test card there. Is that what you're thinking?
No.
Okay. You're thinking, I've got certain slots that I can do more cheaply. Is that what you're thinking?
Until we know what money we've got, we're not going to be able to work out how we're going to spend it. So I know it's annoying, and if we were doing this festival in January, I could say a lot more, but I honestly don't know how much money exactly I'll have. And
so you haven't even had the starting point yet of being told what your budget is?
No.
So you can't. So you haven't made suggestions about what cuts.
Well, we've made suggestions. Because we don't know exactly how much we're going to lose. They are a range of suggestions of the different price points. Sounds like a supermarket when you say it like that.
It's quite. I mean, I'm asking.
But you just don't know.
It's very important.
Look, it's really important, and the reason, and because it's important, I'm not going to, you know, much as I know you'd like me to, start saying things which may not end up being the case because we don't know quite yet where the cuts are going to fall and how much it's going to fall.
But I'm just wondering if the tape we've seen of the BBC One of the future is actually not a tape that's been put together with regard to these massive cuts that you're going to have to face.
I think you'll still see a huge amount of quality drama. I think you'll still see very high quality and enjoyable comedy. I think you'll see the best factual in the world on BBC One. Another really exciting thing we've got coming through is we're going to do a project next year called Fight for Life, which is what we think is the largest live natural history broadcast in history. It will mean that we are presenting live from 2 continents and 4 other locations. We'll have a location in Africa, we'll have a location in North America, and then reports from 4 or 5 other places around the world. And we'll broadcast that over 4 weeks, telling the story of a key moment in animals' lives, which is this period in the early spring, from all these different places, bound up with some live presenters around the world. So those kinds of pieces in Factual, which are very, very ambitious, firsts for us, we'll continue to look for them and find them. The hard part is finding things like that, not worrying about the money as much.
Okay, I've got another tweet. Anyone else with a question, do put your hand up. We've got about 20 minutes to go. We can throw it as wide as you like, ask whatever you want. The tweet actually goes back to your Saturday night problem, if I can describe it like that. Do you think The Voice can beat X Factor, and if it doesn't work, will you drop it after one series?
Ah. Who's sending these?
I'm reading them with incredible conviction.
You are. Well, we've got a 2-year deal. So,
okay, that's the answer. All right, next question. Yeah. But so after 2 years, then, fine. Anyone else? Anyone else? Saturday nights. Anyone want to tell Danny what he should be doing for that massive, Strictly sort of zone? This is the moment. So Twitter has stopped people putting their hands up in rooms.
Is that what's happened?
I think it has. I think it's changed our society. Yes, thank you.
Catherine Jessica, the Natural History Unit. You've already mentioned Fight for Life, which is really exciting, coming out of the Natural History Unit. Is there anything else you're looking for us to particularly try and target now? You know, try and put forward in development. Any advice you've got? What you like in the past, or
yeah. Well, I love the things we do, and I think a lot they are. You know, that blue chip natural history is one of the things that really defines BBC One. I think along with things like the high quality drama, it really, really is one of the most definitional things we do, the great comedy. So what I like about Fight for Life, I like its scale, I like the level of innovation involved, I like the ambition of it, I like the way it will tell us things about the animal world you've not seen before in that way. We're actually just been talking to Andrew Jackson about another series which uses new different kinds of filming techniques to show the world of small animals in a different way. For me, it's about how you can introduce new tones and perspectives on the animal kingdom through technology and different kinds of storytelling.
Tweet comes through, what are your plans on Factual? And that's a very good question, because we noticed yesterday that the new controller BBC Three has dropped your programme Hotter Than My Daughter.
Yes.
Well, I just wondered if you might bring that on.
The way you read that was like you'd only just heard it, but I told you that time just before we started, Jeremy.
Well, I had Sexier Than My Daughter, so yeah. I had it wrong. But anyway, you're going to miss that one.
No plans to bring that across, Jeremy. Thank you for checking that with me. No, we won't move that across.
But Factual, give us your factual thought, because as I say, that's one of your strongest areas on your CV. And you've got stuff coming down with Freddie Flintoff and all that, so you tell us what you're going to do.
Well, we're going to look for big live projects in the way I've just described. I'd like to find more observational documentary for 9 o'clock. I think that's one other area we've been doing less of on BBC One in the last few years. And I'd like us to make quite a substantial return to. So that's one big area I'd like us to do quite a lot more work in. We've commissioned 2 or 3 obdoc series for 9 o'clock already, and I'd like to find a number more for the coming years. So that's one key area. I think Factual, that has a very entertaining kind of skin to it, is very, very important to us. The dinosaur series you saw on there has obviously got entertainment's heart, but there's a lot of new research in it about dinosaur fossils. So that is another area really where I'd really like us to find more, and I'd like us to find a couple more big programme brands for 8 o'clock in the way that the BBC's done in the past with shows like Watchdog.
The programme Benidorm Bastards, which you're renaming Off Their Rocker, sorry for laughing, is that a factual format?
No, that's a hidden camera show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a hidden camera show. It's only a pilot, but it's a hidden camera show about old people pulling off, older citizens pulling off hidden camera stunts.
Pulling it, okay. Anyone else on Factual? Or actually, I've got another tweet on talent which says this: as Sky are poaching established names, what is your approach to breaking new talent and keeping them?
Yeah, a very challenging environment for talent at the moment. Obviously, television is in a good place, and viewing numbers are actually up across television, and so there's a big battle, as there has always been, for talent, and the BBC is in a slightly different place than it used to be, and saying we're not going to pay maybe what we used to in the past. So what you've got to do is try and get a mix of the big talent who really just want to be on the BBC, and like me, are very proud to be working for the BBC. And bringing through new talent, and I think that's a really good thing. We've just given a Saturday night entertainment series to a 24-year-old in Kevin Bridges, so we need to take risks on new people, as well as try and make sure that the very best of British talent want to work on the BBC. You said we should look for talent that's a bit older or old. So can we find talent who are in their 50s, 60s and 70s? You want the best people and the people who are most interesting. You want the average age of the BBC audience reflected back. I suspect the new national treasures are not going to be 20-year-olds. Well, I was just making a couple of points there. First of all, new talent doesn't have to mean young. That's one point I was trying to make in these. I can't remember where I said that, but I think that's true. New talent doesn't have to mean young. You can have new talent of all sorts of ages, depends where you look. And I think we've got an average audience age of 50. We need to reflect the age of our audience back and the age of all of our viewers back. We need to, BBC One reaches 80% of the public each week. It's a massive total of people. And people of all ages. I think it reaches the most young people of any channel as well. So we need to find programmes that appeal to young people, but we absolutely should reflect the audience back to itself and reflect talent of all ages on BBC One.
Do you think the BBC has learnt its lesson from the Miriam O'Reilly case?
Well, I think... I wasn't too involved in the detail of it. I know the BBC apologised. I know that Miriam is back on the BBC, which I'm glad to see. She's presenting again on BBC One.
But not in peak time on BBC One?
Not at the moment, no, but you never know. It's always about finding the right people for the right shows, but I absolutely feel that we've got a clear commitment to making sure that the channel reflects audiences of all ages. Because
in the session yesterday, Lorraine Hegarty was asked about that, said, rather bluntly, she wouldn't have booked Miriam for Country File when it moved to peak time. What's your comment on that?
Always interested to hear Lorraine's views.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, I can see a hand up there. Although you seem to be you're pointing at someone at the front. Okay, thank you. You're being pointed at by a woman right at the back of the room. Far away.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't. I think you have to, these jobs...
Sorry, can I just repeat the question? It wasn't heard by the room, but regretting Zen, and the other one was children's, yeah?
Children's, if children's, one of the proposals, suggestions regarding DQF is moving children.
Moving children's, okay, sorry.
I don't regret the Zen decision. We talked about it in detail, Ben and I, and I've given you the reasons why I thought it was, and I'm glad people enjoyed it. I wouldn't want to put out anything on BBC One that people didn't enjoy. But no, I don't regret that, and I hope we're going to have a good balance between crime and detective drama and other types of drama in the next 18 months. On the children's thing, you're right to say it's one of the ideas that came out of the DQF process, which is a classic BBC acronym for how we're going to save the 20%. And I don't know whether it's going to happen. So please do ask me again, which I'm sure you will, if it does happen.
But in terms of bringing younger viewers to your channel, do you think it's important to keep children's programming on BBC One?
Well, there's lots of different ways you attract young audiences, from Doctor Who to Total Wipeout and so on. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. But specifically on the children's programming block, I don't really want to comment until I know whether it's going to happen.
A tweet has come in. Are you worried about the effect on programmes being moved to Salford and Glasgow, like Question Time and Breakfast?
Not really, no. I think we're going to benefit from it. We've just announced the move of Waterloo Road to Scotland, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to give it a new lease of life. I know that the editor of Breakfast, Alison, is not worried at all about the move to Salford. She thinks it's going to really make the programme actually more interesting in lots of ways.
Well, she's lost one of her presenters for a start. So.
She has, and Shana's just appearing on National Treasures Live for me in a history show in prime time at the moment. So Sian's still very involved with the BBC and BBC One. And these are personal choices, and I absolutely understand some people want to move and some people don't.
Well, what's the premium in going to Salford? How will it change Breakfast for the better?
Well, I think the idea is that we will be better at reflecting the nation back to itself if our programmes are made more widely across the country. And I think there's a logic to that. And I hope you'll see the fruits of that in the coming years. Are you going?
But Breakfast, Radio 2 isn't going at the moment, although I haven't looked at the news this morning. You think being from Salford allows you to reflect Newcastle back to itself better, do you?
Well, we need to make programmes in lots of different places. Undoubtedly, we're going to have a number of hubs. Glasgow's a hub, Cardiff's a hub, London, Manchester, Birmingham. We're not going to be everywhere, of course.
But you're happy with the strategy, because the dead weight cost is what people point out, that actually, before you've even made a programme, you've paid an enormous amount of money in very straitened times to shift everyone.
Yeah, I'm happy with the strategy.
You're happy with that?
I am happy with the strategy.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, over here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Science has been, with what Mr. Google said yesterday, it's been a big theme this weekend. I think that there are great opportunities for science on BBC One. I think that you can just see, actually, with the recent Richard Hammond series, Journey to the Centre of the Earth, and the similar one about oceans, that they're actually a massive appetite. Those shows are getting 5 million on BBC One for some really interesting science. I think that mixing them with strong entertainment values and Faces You Know is always very, very important on BBC One. But I think if you can combine scale with Faces You Know and a strong sense of entertainment value to go with the science, I think the BBC One audience will take lots and lots of quite complex science, actually. How important is ratings to that? It's not everything, but as I said before, I want to spend BBC One's money, license fee payers' money, on programmes people watch. And I think Brian's point about, you know, science making a difference through the BBC, that happens most successfully if lots of people are watching. That doesn't mean you should be dumbing it down. That doesn't mean you should be obsessed with ratings. But I don't think we should be ashamed of the idea that we make programmes that reach a lot of people and educate, inform and entertain a lot of people. You mentioned that the Natural History Project tweet comes in. Can you give us some more information on this live Natural History Project? Non-stop live transmission for 4 weeks. Not non-stop, although we haven't quite got to the... we haven't properly finished off our work on how the multi-platform bit will work and whether it will be live throughout this period or just excerpts. But it will be on twice weekly on TV. There'll be lots of multi-platform content of various kinds to go with it. It's like Spring Watch, but around the world, basically, is it? It's going to feel quite different to that because we've got so many different places, both north and south of the equator, and it's about wildlife in very different places. But it is live broadcast, yeah. OK. Anyone else? We've got about 5–10 minutes left. Yes, at the front. Okay, I'll just repeat the thrust because it's not with no microphone. Just Twitter and 3G and all that, and how you bring that into BBC One. Well, I think we're starting to. I think you'll find, you know, we're looking at ways in which we can get quite a lot of social media innovation into The Voice when that comes next year. We're going to work quite hard at that. I think, Chris, with Comic Relief, you've proven time and time again the value of different forms of social media and interactivity. So I think they are really going to be very important. I think the one danger is that we begin to actually over-focus on them as the place we go to for innovation and experimentation. Because actually what's going to be more interesting for me, or as interesting, is how can we be innovative, how can we be experimental on television with the form and craft we know, as well as how we interact with new media. And I'd really like the next few years on BBC One to be known for scale, quality, thoughtfulness, entertainment value. I'd also really like them to be known for a kind of special age of innovation and experimentation on BBC One in a way we haven't always seen. But do you see the web dimension then as almost an add-on? Because if you do, then it's a saving, isn't it? I don't see it as an add-on. I see it as part of the whole. I see it as contributing to a whole. But, you know, it would be great to get some innovation going on The Voice. It would be absolutely brilliant. And we know that we need to make BBC One fit for purpose across a wide range of digital platforms. But actually, if we can come up with some innovation and experimentation in those comedy pilots, that's as important. We're also going to do a series of improvised dramas for BBC One. We think it's the first time that there's been a whole series of improvised dramas in prime time on BBC One that Dominic Savage is going to do for us. And I think projects like this, a set of improvised dramas, projects like transmittable comedy pilots, I'd like us to be known for innovation and experimentation on BBC One. I don't think one should think those should always be things you do on smaller channels on BBC Three. We need to get big audiences. We're a channel of scale. But if we can combine it being a channel of scale with a reputation for innovation and experimentation, I think that will excite the audience, and I think it can excite producers as well. Tweet comes in. What are your plans for 10:35, Danny? Are you still looking for single docs to play there? Yeah, we are. We commission about 20 of those a year and some series. So we absolutely are. And actually, in terms of the next commissioning year, which we're basically in now for 12-13, we still need a lot of single docs for 10:35 and a couple of series, but actually more single docs. I'm trying to start bunching them in seasons a bit more. We're going to have a season around disability coming up quite soon in our 1035 docs. But if you just got a great single story, we did 1, 2 or 3 weeks ago that Charlotte and I commissioned about a mum who hoards all her things and the impact that that's had on her family. And if you just got a great piece of tape with a very compelling character, we'll always want to look at that too.
Will EastEnders take a break next year during the Olympics?
No.
Okay. That's it, is it? Just no?
No, it's going to be on.
Right.
I don't want to miss EastEnders.
Throughout no, fine, okay. Yeah. There's another tweet about the Olympics. How are you going to make the coverage of the 2012 Olympics bigger and different than any other sport on BBC One?
Well, I think Roger Mosey, who's the head of our Olympic coverage, has either done a session already or is going to do a session the next 24 tomorrow on that, and he'll describe it much better than I will. That we've got a commitment, I believe, to be live broadcasting every single sport. I think, you know, in terms of what Chris was saying around innovation, around new media, that the Olympics is going to be a very, very important moment for the BBC. And I think in some ways a watershed moment in terms of how far we can develop our new media. So it's going to be a very, very big moment. And it will absolutely dominate BBC One, the linear TV channel, through that period.
Yes, sir.
Can I go back to the strategy, the question about seasons? What strategy put in place so that the industry know when the seasons come? Because often you find out seasons when it's too late.
Yeah.
You might be forward and they say, oh, we've got a season about coming up soon. What strategy?
Yeah. I think that's a good question, and it is really tricky because, and I had that feedback quite a few times at BBC Three where we did a lot of seasons. The truth sometimes about those seasons is that they sometimes start where you get a really good single idea in, and it makes us think, actually, that's really good, or two have come in a similar area, we can make that heart of a season. And from that point on, it actually moves quite fast because you've already got, say you're doing 4 docs, you may already have 2 or 3. So sometimes those seasons are engineered by us and we have a specific idea we want to develop. But actually, more often than not, the kind of tipping point for those is actually good quality, original, I must commission that, single documentary. That's why it's slightly frustrating, and I can understand that. But I think the reality is just keep pitching really good singles ideas, and you may find your pieces at the heart of a season. We kind of engineer around it.
Okay, and we're going to wrap up there, but I just want to make sure we haven't missed any other things that you're going to announce today. So
we've talked about Fight for Life, we've talked about Kevin Bridges, we've talked about The Village,
talked about your comedy pilots. I think you've done a lot.
And the improvised drama, yeah.
Well, I want to say I wish you good luck, Danny Cohen. Massive job, and you've laid out your vision for us here today. We're very grateful. Thank you for coming in. Danny Cohen. And thank you.